Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 511 being recorded on August 29th, 2018. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano, and there's more people.
I refuse. I'm not taking it.
Ken's just
Alex, is the screen I'm looking at different too now? I'm not used to seeing all of them all the time, am I?
Yes,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I put Jeremy and Josh on their dedicated screen so you can see them all the time.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
No, that's good. I like to monitor them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're sure about that.
It's like the
Like
Brady
it's
Bunch.
important. The only reason I noticed it is when I was looking to see what the podcast episode number was. It was very small on the screen as opposed to full screen because it's only a quarter of it. But that's fine. It's fine. I just needed to know. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is we talk about computer hardware and stuff. And sometimes things before that, sometimes after that. We record the show on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. PCPer.com/live is the URL for that. You can get a little reminder in your email inbox if you go to PCPer.com/subscribe. That's how you'll know when we're hosting this live event. Excuse me. Pull a Josh there. Or any other live events we may be having. Maybe some live events we might be having in the month of September related to graphics. I don't know. We're not positive yet. But if you want to know about that, you'll go to PCPer.com/subscribe or follow us on Twitter or doing those other things that you do to follow and stalk us and do the things that people do on the internet. I don't know. We still have our Patreon campaign running. Obviously, patreon.com/PCPer. This is the place for you to become a regular contributor financially to the website. If you run an ad blocker, if you just think Josh is funny looking, if you just think the content or videos that we do are worth a damn, this is for your way to chip in $1 or $3 or $5 or $10 or $20 a month, whatever you think we're worth. I won't judge you based on how much you're judging us when you do it, but we greatly appreciate each and every one that does that. As is always the case, if you become a new patron or increase your patronage during the live stream, I will give you a shout out, just like I'm doing right now for Chris Ellington, who has moved their pledge up from $3 a month to $5 a month. Thank you, Chris Ellington. That is awesome. We appreciate it greatly. We have our merch store at joshtech.com. That's JOSHTEKK.com, where you can buy Death Wish Raid, Hot Dog Down a Hallway, Super Pipe. We've got the PC Per logo shirt, of course. Let's not forget the PC Per mug and the world exclusive Josh Tech mug print and t-shirt that are taking the world by storm. Exclusive. And it looks just like Josh's screen, both him and the picture behind him. So, there you go.
The double Josh. What does it mean?
It's too much, Josh.
Too much.
Let's dive into the stories we've got then this week, starting with a review that Sebastian wrote up of the Azulle Inspire Fanless Intel Kaby Lake Barebone Mini PC. Azulle. Why am I
Ghostbusters?
Yeah, is that the Ghostbusters?
No, that's Azulle.
That's just Azulle. Okay.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah, that's what I was going. And isn't Inspire an Acer brand? Or is that Acer Aspire?
Aspire.
There's Inspiron, which is Dell.
Inspiron is Dell.
But I think there's Aspire.
Yeah, it's
It's Acer, like ASP. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So unrelated to any of those brands and manufacturers, this is basically like a Nook competitor, if you will. Core i7, up to 32 gigs of RAM, 2 SODIMM slots in here, both 2.5 inch and M.2 storage solutions. The one that Sebastian got sent was the Core i5 variant, apparently. So it does have Kaby Lake parts up through and all the way down to Kaby or Apollo Lake if you want that. The prices on these are, I think, pretty competitive. $335 is the MSRP for the bare bones of the Core i5 version that Sebastian was able to look at. Obviously, you've got to add in, what do you got to add in? Memory, storage. That's it, right? You could add in 1 or 2 SODIMMs, an NVMe drive or 2.5 inch drive, and you'd be good to go.
Yeah.
Pretty standard external power brick. They give you the necessary SATA data and power cables, 2 Wi-Fi antenna, and of course, a remote control. Looks very familiar to the Nook, very similar form factor. It does have a serial port, so we can all
look at the bent pins in that.
Yeah.
DB9.
Look, nobody's going to use the serial port.
I would use a serial port.
For what?
What do you use a serial port for?
Yeah, that's part of the standard.
Output.
Those 2 pins are supposed to be.
My Sidewinder. Oh, that's a game port. That's different. How many pins did a game port have, Josh?
25.
I see.
That's LPT.
10.
I think it's 10 instead of
18?
9.
This is 9 here for serial. I believe it had 15. Or the VGA had 15.
Definitely.
I don't know, man.
We need to hand out our geek cards here.
Look, it's been so long. It's been so long. Sebastian's giving you your measurements
I'm
with this
counting. 1,
high-tech
2,
ruler.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
I was right.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah, you didn't count right, though.
I don't.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
11, 12.
That's how you're supposed to count it.
Here's the insides of this guy here. Not much to it. You can see the DIMM slots there. The 2.5-inch drive bay. There on the left is in the lid. I guess that would actually be the base of the system. And you've got the Wi-Fi card and the M.2 card kind of overlapping a little bit there. No issues with thermals on that, you don't think?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Nice
No,
open
no,
design,
it's-
too.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, it's fairly easy to build in and get to. So, I mean, there it is with the HyperX memory, the 960 Evo in place. In terms of performance, this is, guess what? It's a Core i5 part. So there you go. Very similar to the ECS Leva Z Plus that uses a slightly higher end. I bet it's 100 megahertz difference between the Core i5 7200U and 7300U. Obviously not going to compete against the 6700 HQ based NUC that is true quad core hyper threaded, right, Ken? Is that the 6700 HQ? Yeah. But pretty decent performance. You're basically looking at high-end notebook level performance. Here's your real quick, simple storage read-write test. No NVMe bottlenecks, it appears. And there you go. Not too bad. I think, did he price it out? $335 for the kit. I guess memory and storage are going to vary so much based on what you choose, right? 960 Evo being, this would be a perfect place to put one of those 660p's, 1 terabyte drive in there, something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
the 960 Evo is a bit overkill.
Yeah. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's a notebook processor and platform, if you will, but a pretty solid option in a competitor to the NUC, and I think quite a bit less expensive as well. Josh, are you hunting for something? Are you going to show us?
No, I just had a cat.
Oh,
But
You just had a cat?
you just
run
had a
away.
cat? Do
No.
you need to go to the hospital?
Not
Yes.
anymore.
Natural childbirth.
Oh, look,
What up, kitty?
it is indeed a cat.
That is cat.
It is actually a cat. Before we get to our next story, let's check we got Patreons rolling in here. We've got a new $1 patron from Alpha Network. Ken? Is that
What?
you? It's not.
Definitely not.
Alpha Network, Ken, thank you very much for that. And then we have a pledge edit from $3 to $5 of Allyn doesn't really exist.
They're on to us.
That's exactly what somebody who didn't exist would do too, Allyn. Next story. This one's pretty interesting.
Doesn't RTX look awesome?
Oh god,
Real time.
Oh my god, real
Allyn
tracing.
It's not ray trace. Look at it. Look at his head. I mean, there's not nearly enough reflections.
Shiny enough?
Those
What-
are cube maps.
What was
if I've ever
the
seen
meme
them.
I saw going around? It was like somebody like a guy's bald head.
pixelated? Oh.
No, it was a bald head,
Yeah.
and they just added a whole bunch of reflections to the bald head, and it was with RTX, without RTX. It was pretty good. Ken, this is a story you wrote up. FreeSync working with NVIDIA GPUs and some strings attached. This was, I think, something that people have been asking for forever. They want to buy cheaper FreeSync monitors. They want the variable refresh to work, but they want the GeForce GPUs behind it. Do we finally have the ability to do that?
Until NVIDIA patches it out.
Yeah, I mean, we can first of all, before we can all assume that's going to happen, right? That somehow this will.
They might not be able to.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
But-
Walk me through the process. What are we looking at?
So over the weekend, some enterprising people on Reddit kind of found out through actually the new World of Warcraft expansion was not where
this
you
part.
hear all the latest hardware news coming out of generally. In the latest WoW expansion, they added an option to toggle what GPU you rendered the game on. Now, this is a setting that's in some of the more modern games. Like I know Far Cry 5 has it. A couple of other games have it. The ability to change what adapter you're rendering the game on. And this enterprising fellow happened to have a FirePro card and a 1080 Ti in their system.
Unique configuration.
Definitely unique configuration.
Yeah.
And they had a FreeSync monitor hooked up to the FirePro card.
Okay.
So they turned on FreeSync through the FirePro configuration panel, and then they set the game to render on their 1080 Ti, and they noticed that FreeSync was still working. They didn't see any tearing, they didn't see any judder, anything like that. So they went, well, as it turns out, in the latest version of Windows 10, 1803, in the April 2018 update, as they're calling it now,
Yeah.
they added GPU switching as an option. So you can have a power-saving GPU and a high-performance GPU and switch between the two. Mostly meant for hybrid configurations and laptops like the Surface Book 2, which has an option for a GTX 1050 or 1060, and then the integrated graphics for battery savings.
Okay.
However, it turns out this gets kind of enabled on desktops. Now, for this original poster on Reddit, it didn't actually work out because the FirePro card appeared as both the power saving and the high performance GPU, and no one's really been able to find a way to kind of configure that. It's probably buried somewhere in the registry to like just an ID for which GPU is identifying as which.
Okay.
So that was kind of a dead end, but it was interesting that this worked. And someone else on Reddit discovered that, well, if you have something like a Raven Ridge APU, they're using a 2200G,
Yep.
then
Which
you
is
could
what we have
configure
pictured
the
here.
AMD GPU as the power-saving GPU and the NVIDIA GPU as the high-performance GPU. It's actually how it's configured out of the box. And FreeSync seems to work. So we kind of set out to duplicate this setup. We used a 2400G, a Ryzen 5 2400G in our case, and a GTX 1080. And we installed both, installed all the drivers, and Windows just kind of automatically picked it up. It picked up the high-performance NVIDIA GPU and the integrated AMD Vega graphics on the Raven Ridge processor.
Yep.
We plugged in the FreeSync display, enabled it on the into the integrated audio video outputs on the motherboard. Enabled FreeSync.
Yes, that's important. If you look at this picture here,
Yeah, you can see the DisplayPort cable
the display
is plugged
port's
into the
connected to
motherboard,
not the not the
which is
GTX
unusual
card.
configuration.
Yeah, yeah, for a desktop user, yeah.
And then we just kind of started playing around with games. And
So one thing do you always have to right click on it and click run with?
you don't actually, because it defaults to the high performance NVIDIA processor because this is
Even
a
if you
system
start the game
without a
through
battery.
Steam?
So
Even if you start the game
Yeah.
through Steam, it does that? Okay.
I think it's probably only DirectX applications it supports. If I had to guess,
Yeah, probably.
you know, considering it's kind of a built-in Microsoft feature
Okay.
at this point. Yeah, so it
So-
actually
so would
defaults
you-
to running all applications on the NVIDIA GPU because it knows it's the higher performance one. It doesn't have battery concerns. Go ahead, Josh.
Never mind. It's too late. It was a joke that its time has passed and never to be seen again.
Never to be
Yeah.
uttered. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
So we kind of enabled this, found that FreeSync was in fact working, did a little digging into how this was working, and you actually notice if you're running a game on the GTX 1080 and then rendering it or outputting it through the onboard graphics, if you scroll up, in the graphics options in Task Manager, you see massive copy operations. And that's because kind of inherently this is copying the frame buffer from the NVIDIA GPU to the AMD GPU for the final display. As it turns out, the AMD driver is handling the frame pacing and the FreeSync ability for all of the frames coming out of it. So FreeSync functionality gets kind of added there in the pipeline.
Interesting.
Now that begs a question. You're copying frame buffers around. How much latency does this add?
Yeah.
Is this even like a playable thing?
He clearly used this wires and this breadboard to figure that out.
Yeah.
It's the best project when you can use wires and a breadboard to figure it out.
And this NVIDIA Shield USB cable.
Yeah.
Those are still the best USB
They're
cables.
very
we have.
long.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
They're very long cables.
So this is some methodology we've kind of messed around with in the past.
Yeah.
So we use an Arduino microcontroller, the Arduino Leonardo, which actually has native support for emulating a USB HID. So in our case, a mouse. We hooked up a push button and an LED, and I wrote some code. So whenever you push the push button on the breadboard, it both simultaneously lights up the LED and sends a left mouse click signal to the operating system.
Within the same millisecond.
Clever.
Yeah. So from that, you can load up a game. In this case, we loaded up Half-Life 2 because we didn't have to worry about potential speeds that it ran at, because we needed to test on the APU and the GTX 1080 at the same frame rate, and because the Source Engine has a built-in frame limiter.
Right, you can manually set what the frame rate
So we set
limit
the
is,
frame rate limit to 140 for the 144 hertz panels.
120.
120?
Yeah.
Okay, so give us a bit of headroom there.
Yep.
Actually,
It was on a 144 panel,
okay,
running at 124, but
okay.
we set the rate limit to 120. So we knew that it was always in the VRR.
inside the VRR range.
Yeah.
Because obviously if it goes out, it'll just inherit the game settings to either tear or VSync on.
Okay.
Yep.
So essentially, Allyn did this testing, and what we did is
1,000 frame per second capture.
Yeah.
So we can have each frame was a millisecond. And then we basically just looked, what was the delta in number of frames between the LED first turning on and the muzzle flash from the gun.
Yeah, so
showing
sort
up
of
on the
the
screen.
input to photon latency.
Yeah.
So what people would generally call input latency.
Yep.
Yeah. And there is a little bit more to it. Like there's a fixed additional amount, like Half-Life, a
The
few
game
frames
engine.
happen before the muzzle actually flashes. But
it's the same across all of the
it's basically the
situations,
same.
right?
So
The configurations.
So just realize that the absolute numbers look kind of high. Like you wouldn't think that it's like 30 milliseconds from moving the mouse until you saw something change on the screen. In reality, it's probably a little bit lower.
Yeah.
Right. But we were just looking for relative differences here. So did a bunch of, I think it was like 14 or 15 like repetitions for each configuration just to kind of average out any scatter or any, weirdness going on. And the end result was that, it adds some latency by having to copy the frame buffer over. Like just native G-Sync, if it was coming straight out from that GPU going right to the display, it was 25 milliseconds.
And to be fair, there were different displays, obviously. They were built around nearly
similar
identical, if not
panel.
identical panels. So response time is going to vary a little bit there, but not a whole lot.
But the important comparison is actually between both. Is the important comparison? No, I guess you have to go across panel types. Yeah, so that is kind of another variable, but we didn't really, we were the
Kind of the end story is it's difficult to make a directly comparable number because the Vega integrated graphics will take longer to render. It's a different GPU. You can't really make a comparison there.
Right.
And the panels are different. However, if you look at the 31.9 milliseconds of input latency for the sort of hacked FreeSync setup in general, it's pretty good. It's not something like 60 or 70 milliseconds, not adding a ton of latency into the pipeline.
Yeah.
Everything we messed around with was perfectly playable.
Yeah,
Now, if you're doing some esports, Twitch stuff, you might notice it, but you're not going to be playing with variable refresh at that rate anyways. You're just going to be running a really high refresh panel with VSync off.
Yeah, if I had to guess, it probably adds something like maybe 5 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Just based on
Do we
looking at
have
those
any
numbers.
concern that that it's not actually mapping everything that the NVIDIA GPU does out to the screen, right? Like I'm trying to figure out if
we were able to, we tested a few games. We didn't test everything, obviously, but we were able to confirm that the 1080 was spinning up.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
it was,
And I'm sure you saw that there was no tearing, right?
Yeah,
and all
I
that.
mean,
But I'm
there
trying to figure out,
could have been
were there
drops.
frames that were dropped, right, and not copied over and not displayed, or something like that.
No,
That's
like,
what I'm trying to figure out.
Because the other thing I did partially as a test to make sure that that VRR was working properly was I also for each configuration I recorded a few segments, like 4-second clips, where I was just kind of like going nuts with the mouse, just panning it around in that scene where you're looking out of a door.
Yeah.
And it was really easy to tell if you did drop frames because like the doorway,
Yeah, the light
is,
of the
smoothly moving
transition
around,
would be
right?
dramatic.
Yeah, it would be pretty obvious.
Okay.
So there was no indication that anything was really not working right.
Yeah. That being said,
we ran into some.
you're going to run into some weird difficulties. Like when we were launching Half-Life 2 on the 1080, like it didn't grab the correct resolution, so we kind of had to go in there and manually like set the resolution with an any file. Like just some weird shit because this isn't a supported thing.
Yeah.
But overall, it actually worked a hell of a lot better and was way easier than I imagined it was going to be. It just kind of worked out of the box.
Is this a thing that this probably still isn't a thing we would recommend people go build their setup around, right?
No,
Not really.
no, because you kind of have to have one of these AMD APUs So you're limited there already. You can't really use 2 discrete cards because there's no way to set what adapter is which for now. That might be something that someone could figure that out.
Yeah.
And then you could add like a $30 FreeSync capable AMD GPU in there and do it.
Yeah.
Like if you already
the thing that would have made this really interesting is that if Intel would have actually enabled adaptive sync support like they announced several years ago.
Yeah.
But they never did it.
Because then it would work with Intel.
That would open things up.
So all your Kaby Lake processors and
way wider. But
okay.
Then it would be like a no-brainer because you probably already have that config somewhere. Right?
Well, let's talk to all the people at the Intel graphics group. They're pushing out drivers more and more. I think this is something.
Could you add FreeSync so we could use our NVIDIA GPU?
They would love it. I mean, hey, we're going to utilize a feature of Intel graphics.
Yeah. So
I'd love to try this on a notebook. Like an Intel or AMD powered notebook with a MX card in it and just output to a FreeSync monitor and see what happens.
Well, G-Sync Mobile already doesn't have a module, so...
Right, and you would still have... I mean, the Intel driver would still have to have adaptive sync enabled, like to be able to enable adaptive sync.
So as far as NVIDIA potentially trying to break this moving forward, like the reason that
I can see why you say why they might not be able to.
It seems way more difficult. It seems like it would need to be a Windows patch rather
Windows
than a driver update.
Like Windows is just getting the frame from one GPU and just passing it on the other one. Right?
Now, that being said, there very well could be something NVIDIA could do in the driver that we're missing, like to kind of exclude themselves from that list. But actually seems like a pretty solid foundation for this to work in some form.
The world is ending.
Forward for a while.
The world is ending.
Indeed.
So what size resolution screen were we working with here?
For this?
25 by 14?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's 1440p?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I need to work with anything.
Now, I would imagine if you were doing this at 4K, realize your frame buffer is significantly larger. It might take longer to copy. Like,
maybe.
That's what I was getting
add more latency.
Yeah, but at least, I mean, we guys didn't do this testing at 720p or something.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we tried to pick like a kind of middle of the road resolution.
Yeah, that's good.
I realize that most people are on
25 by 14 is
1080p.
still high, right? I mean, it's it's between 1080p and 4K. I get it, but still pretty high.
Interestingly enough, this happened a couple of days after I started looking for 1440p G-Sync panels, and I went, I said, I don't think I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
All right, check that story out. It's on the website if you want a little bit more detail. Also, real quick, we could talk about this. We did a little bit more testing with StoreMI. We actually Allyn looked at StoreMI when the X470 chipset launched. And you really didn't look at StoreMI as much as you were looking at the storage performance of the platform as a whole, and StoreMI was a segment.
Just a piece of it,
was a segment of that.
So I got to ask this one real quick thing.
Oh, yes.
They not call it Stormy because of the current political situation.
I bet that's exactly why. Yeah. I mean, they built, I think it's more of a play on SenseMI, and they didn't call it SenseMe. So,
that could lead to problems.
Yeah.
Sense me, Stormy.
So we did some more testing with StoreMI. This was actually pretty quick testing. We wanted to see basically AMD's kind of stance was they believe StoreMI brought them to a matching or better level of storage capability that Optane caching does. Optane, Intel's really leaning into Optane caching, the whole Core Plus idea, all that stuff. And StoreMI is what AMD's answer is to it. Now, to be fair, StoreMI isn't developed by AMD. It's built by Modus. Fuse Drive.
You can run it on, well, there's a retail version you could run on Intel.
You can buy it and run it on anything, right? Intel, AMD, whatever. This StoreMI variant, this kind of AMD branded version specific to their platforms is free. It's included if you have a supporting platform, so Threadripper or X470. It's not a caching system. It's a tiered storage solution, which basically means...
It's sort of like RAID 0.
It is kind of like that. And it's tiered in the way that, like, hey, you can have 2 gigs of memory as cache, and then a 256 gig SSD, and then a 10 terabyte hard drive. And the stuff you use more often will go to the fastest part, right? And that's kind of what the idea is. But it is RAID 0 in the fact that it's not duplicating the content.
The fastest part.
It's creating a JBOD.
It'll actually move, like if you have something on the hard drive and then you start using it frequently, it will physically move that data to the SSD.
So you get the benefit is you get the capacity of both drives combined. The downside is if one of those 2 drives dies, you lose whatever.
You basically end up with like Swiss cheese
Yeah.
of the,
Yeah. So it
You're
is
pretty
like a
much not
RAID
getting
0
that
in terms
back.
of what you should be doing for planning and backing up and all that.
Yeah.
One interesting thing that they brought up, AMD did, was about the pricing side. And it's an interesting debate to have. Their argument is that StoreMI is cheaper than Optane because you don't have to buy an Optane module.
Don't say.
Well, I mean, the assumption is if you're an enthusiast, you're building a system, you're going to have an SSD and you're going to have a hard drive. You're just going to have, a mass storage, whether it be, an 8 terabyte or 12 terabyte or 4 terabyte, a hard drive. Then you're going to have an SSD that's somewhere between 120 and 500 gigs of space.
Yeah.
And the idea there is they're saying, hey, with StoreMI, you can use those two components, have an accelerated system. If you want to accelerate your hard drive, which is all you really want to accelerate, right? You don't need to accelerate, even if you have a SATA SSD, we'll be realistic. You don't need to accelerate that with Optane or whatever, anything. If you want to do that, then you have to buy this Optane module. It takes up one of your M.2 ports, and that's another $60 if you get the 32 gig version, 120, 150 bucks if you get the 64 gig version.
Platform that supports Optane memory.
Yeah, but you have to have the X470 new platform from AMD to get StoreMI too.
True.
So they're basically saying, hey, for 60 to 120 bucks less, you get similar functionality. And that's all else being equal, processors same price, motherboard same price, memory same price.
You're kind of assuming they already have another SSD to throw at it, I guess.
No. I mean, the assumption is you're building a system. You either have a 250 gig SSD or you're going to buy one or some variant thereof, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a fair assumption. I think if we were building systems for ourselves, you excluded, or we were building systems for a friend or a colleague, you probably wouldn't say, hey, go get a 4 terabyte SSD. You'd probably say, get a 4 terabyte hard drive and a 256 gig SSD.
Sure.
Right. So the cost question is there. And then in terms of performance, what we did is we looked at the StoreMI with an 860 EVO, so actually an M.2 SATA SSD. And then the Intel platform, we used Optane. Was it the 64 gig module we were using? Yeah, for its caching.
The M10 module.
Yeah. I always forget that has a model name.
It's just the newer, it's a newer version of, because they also make M10 in 32 and 16s.
Yeah.
That's just a newer Optane memory module that has the power management.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So if you look at some of our testing, like PC Mark 10, you'll see both platforms get speed ups from the hard drive only to the cached version or the tiered version. The Intel platforms tend to start out at a higher performance, and as a result, the cached performance also tends to be higher. And you see that in PC Mark 10, you see that in SysMark as well.
Because when StoreMI is trying to do the caching, realize it's trying to also load the thing and at the same time move the data.
You think it's moving the data at the same time?
I think it does some of that during the initial run. Like it's in, this might...
So it's putting a little bit more load on the system.
Yeah, it just has to do more stuff. Right?
Okay.
So the first run might be slower. Right.
Yes. Yeah, we do see that in some of our tests. But
generally, you also see that the percent gain is higher, even though the StoreMI beginning and end result might end up being lower than the Intel beginning and end result.
Yeah.
Overall, the percent gain's higher because the first run kind of gets held back a little bit.
Right? Sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So those give you some productivity-based testing. There is. Basically, the caching is working, right? Like it works. The software goes faster. Your computer goes faster when you use it.
Yep.
Ken did some Lightroom CC imports, right? This is more testing the write caching. So if you're going to do a bunch of writes to this combined cached tiered storage unit, is it accelerated?
Yeah.
Because you would much rather write to an SSD than you would to a hard drive. But then it has to do something with that storage after that. Lightroom didn't see a dramatic improvement either way. The Intel one, again, saw a better improvement than the AMD StoreMI. But then if you look at something like, this is digital content archiving, which is AKA file copy from, you're working on it on your external drive or on your main drive, and you're copying it to the secondary hard drive or accelerated.
Other way around.
Or
you're working on it on fast storage.
Yeah, you're copying it to the cached or tiered platform. Yeah, sorry. You get dramatic improvements in what the write speed is. So this is what, a 50 gigs of video, or is it one file, or is it pictures?
It's a 50 gig project folder, mostly video, but some small files. It was Premiere project for a video we did.
Got it. And so obviously it's again a little bit faster on Intel, but in general much faster on both. And then what's interesting is that we assume in both of these situations that data, well, on the AMD side, StoreMI, we probably think it keeps it on the SSD until some amount of time passes and you don't access it, and then it would copy it to the hard drive in the background. With the Optane caching, we probably think it's going straight to the, I mean, it is definitely, it's going to the Optane, and then it's copying it directly to the hard drive.
It might not be copying, well...
It has to, because the Optane one
probably keeps some on the Optane.
It might, but it's making a duplicate copy on the hard drive.
Yeah. It's not going to keep all of the big video files on the Optane.
So Optane, remember that's additive, like it's an addition to the hard drive, and it's able to cache incoming because it's non-volatile.
Right.
That's the only reason Intel lets that fly.
Right.
But the idea is that as soon as there's any idle period, it's immediately copied and duplicated over to the hard disk, because they never want to, Intel's system should always be able to like unhook the Optane without having to move a bunch of stuff. Right. It's usually generally like a relatively fast process.
When you disable it in software.
When you disable it in software, if you wanted to unpair them. StoreMI, not so much. Like, I don't know if you wrote it in the article, Ken, but you were trying to undo the StoreMI at one point.
trying to undo it.
And it was like...
Yeah, I think Ryan mentioned that.
Yeah.
It was take a really long time.
I mean, it could be copying hundreds of gigs in this case.
Yeah, potentially you could have a 256 gig SSD full.
Which you then need to copy to your slow hard drive. Again, disabling StoreMI is not something you're going to want to do all the time.
Or that you should do.
Yeah.
But yeah. The other thing, I mean, and probably the use case that AMD leans into the most of StoreMI is accelerating things like game launches, application launches. And here you see these huge gains, right? Now, this is where Allyn pointed out, the hard drive only is actually faster than the first time you ran it when we had the cache enabled. And that's because it's doing that duplicate work. Yeah. It's doing the extra work in the background. But when we closed it, let it sit, rebooted the machine, and went back and started again, it went from that 83 seconds down to 21 seconds.
Yeah, which is significant.
Oh, that's huge. And it's even, if you count the 54 to 21 drop, that's still big. Yeah. Then if you look at the Intel side, you get a similar thing where it's the second run that gets the majority, get the most speed up from the cache start.
But it does at least go, like in my experience, the Intel solution will always go, at worst, the hard disk speed the first time.
Yeah, makes sense because of the way it's a cache versus the tier.
It's just duplicating it. It's not moving blocks around and trying to launch it at the same time.
Similar story here with GTA 5 in the launching story mode in there, which is something that does take for freaking ever. Again, big speed ups on both platforms. You get the little intricacy of the first one being longer on the StoreMI solution, but overall pretty good. And then one last final data point. We happen to run Sysmark, which is one of our productivity tests that we utilize. We just did like 5 iterations of it. And what we noticed was the score on the 8700K with Optane varied a lot. And that's not something we'd ever seen in any of our standard non-cached testing. Whereas on this StoreMI, it was, as flat a line as you can get in this kind of, multi-hour test before.
I added a note in there, even in the article, because I'm not, like, we've done similar tests before. I don't know what was different about it this time that made it bounce around that much. But like I don't
know if we've ever done 5 consecutive.
I've never done 5, but
in Sysmark with that.
We've previously done like 3,
Optane.
like 3 in a row. Usually, like when I was doing other testing before, it was usually just 3 in a row. But I've never seen it do anything other than climb.
Yeah,
during those 3, like every single time.
So it's interesting because one of the advantages on paper, at least, that StoreMI has is that you have a cache up to 250 gigs. As opposed to the limit is 64 gigs for Optane.
Yep.
Now, I want to point out, like, we tried for a little bit, honestly, not tremendously hard, to try to figure out how to break Optane caching, like make it so that 64 gigs wasn't enough to do something accelerated.
It's very hard.
And it's hard to do. It's a very intelligent caching system.
Yeah.
But like mentally, theoretically, from a scientific, if I were writing a paper on this or
you would
doing my dissertation,
you would assume that more is better.
There has to be a point where having 4 times as much cache means that you can accelerate 4 times as much stuff than 64 gigs.
And I think for that to happen, StoreMI would have to be as intelligent about the caching as Intel is.
Yeah.
You have to realize Intel's been doing this for like a decade now.
Sure.
Right?
But I think Modus has been doing it for a while too. I don't know, but so I mean that's kind of our takeaway from this is that they're just different enough, StoreMI and Optane caching, that it's not a true like apples to apples comparison. But if AMD's goal was to create a storage ecosystem that provided the same level of performance and had some advantages in terms of cost or some advantages in terms of capacity, they've definitely done it. It's something that if you're building a new Ryzen system, you should look at. Keep in mind that the biggest drawback to StoreMI is that it is difficult to undo.
Yes.
Right. So if you use this system and you just use it, then whatever, it's fine. It's going to be great. But like to disable it and say, I don't want to go back to just this. Keep in mind that files are going to be in all different kinds of places. And even if the undo thing works correctly and you go back to, it copies everything back to your SSD.
I don't think we've
Still
ever
have
seen
some weird partitions on your drives.
Yeah,
you have to disk part of drive before clean it before you.
The undo, as far as move your data back to the places where it was supposed to go and separate the two drives, that works.
Yeah.
The problem is that those two drives, you can't just move them to a non-StoreMI machine. If you put them in...
Right, you can leave them in there and utilize them
they'll still be
separately.
seen, like once you have created a StoreMI array on whatever those storage devices are, right? It manipulates the EFI partitions in such a way that if you move them to a system that doesn't have StoreMI on it, the system will not be able to even recognize the partitions on the disk.
Yeah.
The data might still be there. It's just you're just not going to get it.
Right.
You're just not going to see anything.
If one of your drives in StoreMI dies and you don't have a backup, you are hosed.
Basically, yeah.
You're not getting that data back.
Yeah, and
nothing
again,
will recognize it. You won't be able to boot your system.
It's just like RAID 0. It's just like JBOD. You're not recovering that.
It's actually a little bit worse, even from a data recovery standpoint, because it's block level. I believe it's like 4 meg or 2 meg or something like that blocks that StoreMI is manipulating. It's block level caching,
not file level.
But it's like almost randomly positioned block level, because over time it's going to be like, oh, I want to write to the hard disk. Well, even though that hard disk might have initially had everything all in a row, over time it's all going to get juggled around at the block level, because StoreMI is arranging those blocks at will, right? So a block, an area that you might have thought was the end of the disk as far as the OS was concerned, could very well be a block at the beginning of the disk, right? So even if you tried to do data recovery and go, well, I can't see the partition layout, sure, but I know my files are there, and I'll use some handy software that'll image the disk and go through and find my files. They'll still be Swiss cheesed because the blocks will not be in the right order, and I don't know of any data recovery software that can decipher the block, the block table that's stored by StoreMI, right? It's going to be this very proprietary kind of thing that I don't think there's any way to get back, right? You'd have to somehow fix the thing so that it looked like it did originally to StoreMI, and then plug it back into a StoreMI driver installed system and pray. Basically, that's how you're going to get your data back.
Back up your systems.
Yes.
Back up all your data like we always tell you to do.
This is basically is riskier than RAID 0. Is what I would consider it.
I don't think anybody that has a hard drive die in RAID 0 expects to get their data back.
If you want to call it black and white like that, then sure, it's equal.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get your data back.
You're reducing possibilities of data recovery.
I don't think anybody who has RAID 0 or JBOD is going to get their data back. That's an unreasonable expectation for a consumer non-enterprise application.
That's true.
All right, let's move on to the next story. Samsung Portable SSD X5. This is it's an external Thunderbolt SSD. What's the quickie on this? We're running long.
It's a fast drive. It goes upward almost 3 gig per second.
Looks like a spaceship.
Good story, Alan. Strong work. High five.
It's kind of bulky given what's in there, right? Because it's just an M.2 SSD that's in there, and they put it in a plastic housing. It's not really like
kind of looks like an automotive paint swatch.
It's kind of curved.
Yeah, it does look like one of those automotive paint swatches.
There you go. There's
pleasure.
Not really.
It's a cool looking drive. It's just instead of making it heatsink style enclosure, what's the name of that other drive, Ken? That the
Techie TechQ Rapide.
Yeah, TechQ Rapide.
The Thunderbolt drive we've tested recently.
Other makers of devices similar to this have just made the housing is the heatsink, right? It's got ridges in it and stuff like that, and it's made out of aluminum on the outside. Well, Samsung, for whatever reason, wanted plastic, even though their previous T5 was an aluminum housing.
Yeah,
they moved to a full plastic housing, which kind of insulates the heat transfer. So they put a big old block of, I think, magnesium on the right side there in that picture. That's the whole half of the shell is just filled with this block.
Such a weird design.
Yeah, it's filled with this block of metal that's supposed to act as a heat sink, but it's not really a sink
because of the plastic outer shell.
There's an insulating outer shell, right? So it's more just like a thermal mass, right?
It's making it a bigger piece.
Yeah. So if you do, I was able to do over 5 minutes, like max full speed, doing like a couple of gig per second writes.
That's fine.
But then you'll eventually hit a brick wall where the thing starts to thermal throttle because there's nowhere for the heat to go.
It's a little odd that the PCB is so large and there's all this empty space and
it's only, these SSDs only produce about 5 or 6 watts when they're fully active. Right. So that's not a lot of power, but again, it needs somewhere for the heat to go. And then
you need a chance of being able to find it in your bag occasionally.
Yeah.
Does the Thunderbolt controller make contact with the heatsink pad?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Because that's drawing more power than the SSD.
I think so.
Yeah.
And if you go fast enough with the magnesium shell, that will spark really nicely.
Yeah.
And it's going to burn and a really bright. And
That's
you'll find it in any bag
thermite.
you put it in.
Yeah.
Any bag.
So
it doesn't matter how dark it is.
So I kind of changed gears on this one, and I ran our regular suite on all of these externals.
Okay.
Back when I first designed that suite, the whole build was so that it could be run on something that was a generic volume, and this is the first time we're actually using it in that way, right? We could even point it up like a NAS if we wanted to.
Don't do that.
It might not be good for the NAS. So end result, I've left a break there in the chart.
The
Yeah, the nah. Those bottom two entries are bottom two entries are natively a 970 or an 860 just direct attached to your system. And you can tell the X5 is getting pretty darn close. Right? For an external, it's surprisingly close. The writes for the random writes weren't as good. You were just there on the other chart. The random writes, which is the orange bars, weren't as good as a native drive. But if you look at the blue bars there, which is your random read speeds, which you're probably more concerned about, pretty close. 20K to 22K difference there. And then mixed burst test, which you could consider kind of a heavier workload. You got some writes going on in the background, and you're doing burst reads. Again, pretty good result. And compared to anything else that's an external, you're talking at least 2x. And we were comparing against USB 3.1 Gen 2, 10 gigabit USB devices, even that had a pair of SATA SSDs and a RAID, and it was still just walking all over them. So really good. If you scroll down a little more, we did a cache test. The newer version of the cache test. I ran this not so much to test the cache because we already knew the cache was going to be similar to a 970 Evo because that's basically the product that's inside this. And it was. I was looking more for the newer version of this cache test that we've run for about a month now. Does a lot of writing. And I was worried about the thermals, right?
Sure.
It's the duty cycle.
You did about 60 gigs of writing 8 times.
Yeah, 8 times. Granted, at the beginning, there were some
300 seconds.
There were relatively large idle times between those 60-second bursts. But as you get towards the middle of that test, you're only
6 seconds, 3 seconds.
Yeah, 6 seconds, 3 seconds. Between 3 passes in a row, each one writing 60 or 70 gig with only a few seconds of breathing room in there. And it still didn't throttle. So I was looking at some of the other reviews on other sites. They did similar kinds of tests, and they were doing like higher Q depth writing, and maybe that loaded it a little bit more and heated up a little bit more. I'm not sure. Maybe their room was just warmer. I mean, it's a funny thing you have when you have an insulator like that. I mean, even the thing that it's sitting on matters, right? Because from plastic to air, it's not really going to conduct heat away and wick heat away. But if you just had it sitting on, say, like a glass table, it would run cooler than if it was just sitting on a wood table, as an example.
Got it.
Right? Like, because you're just relying on passive heat transfer out of the shell. So that very much matters. So I would say don't use it with it like sitting on the blanket of your bed and just be beating the crap out of it. It's probably going to throttle. Right? Anyway.
So you said potential issues. There's a Thunderbolt thing. There's no backwards compatibility on this drive, which some people might.
Yeah, so people that are used to using USB external devices that have USB Type-C ports on them, well, Thunderbolt uses the same physical port, but it's communicating differently, right? So if you plug it, I mean, you're free to try to plug it into a USB 3.1 port, but it's just going to throw up this warning, and this particular controller is not able to just change gears and start speaking, or start translating the USB UASP protocol over to NVMe.
Yeah,
it's just not a thing. That's a thing yet, right? There's what's that other something Ridge controller, Ken?
Titan
Ridge. So Alpine Ridge is only Thunderbolt. Doesn't even really speak USB other than just to tell you, hey, it's
it has native USB 3.1 in it.
It does?
Yeah.
Alpine Ridge?
Yeah, it's a Thunderbolt 3 controller. It has power, USB 3, and Thunderbolt.
Then what was different about the other one?
Well, the other one allows, in Alpine Ridge, it's just lanes of USB 3.
Yeah.
Titan Ridge Titan Ridge is meant for the primary application they've talked about is docks. So if you have a USB 3.1 port on your computer that supports power delivery, USB, and display port, then a dock with a Titan Ridge controller in it could fall back.
Yes.
And use those capabilities via the USB port.
But what we don't know is if Titan Ridge can also translate to NVMe.
Yeah. That's
the big question. So even with a Titan Ridge chip in there, it might not be any different.
Okay.
Right? Because that's more than just a generic interface thing. Like you have to talk the other protocol to the device on the other side of the chip, right?
Which actually brings us one of the more interesting things we kind of stuck into this article is days ago we got the adapter I imported from China, which is a USB 3.1 to M.2 PCIe adapter.
Yep.
For like $25 from China. It's a J-Micron controller.
Yeah, J-Micron controller in there. And it turned out to be, we weren't even sure what generation USB it was. Because it didn't even, it just said 3.1. It turned out it was actually Gen 2. So it was going, full 10 gigabit to a NVMe device on the other side of it. Did reasonably well.
And this was a J-Micron device?
Yeah,
it was just a J-Micron control, interface adapter.
Yeah, but still, it didn't cause pauses.
No. There was no stuttering. None of that.
Just can't let anything go, Josh.
No, I can't.
Well,
I have a long,
so
long
what's it going to cost me?
They're expensive. They're like 70 cents a gig. Now I will say, I mean, they're kind of in this thing where, I mean, that's the fastest game in town for an external.
What?
By a lot. So you kind of
too much money.
So the combination of it's a lot of money. Relatively to anything else that's an external.
Yeah.
Even
that's about as far from 10 cents a gig as you can possibly get.
I mean, you take this versus like Ken's $25 adapter, and then when you can finally find one like a cheap 660p or something, right? Like that would make a pretty good external.
Yeah, that adapter plus a 1 terabyte,
1 terabyte or
660p for $200.
Yeah. So that would be $225 potentially compared to $1,400.
Yeah. No, well, $700 for the 1 terabyte. That's what I was looking at.
Oh, you were comparing the 1 terabyte.
1 terabyte for $200.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 425 compared to.
And the Chinese adapter is smaller.
That's true too. It's a narrower thing. It's a little bit longer, but it's narrower. So, yeah, the pricing's kind of odd, but I get it, right? Like. They can get away with those prices because you just can't get that performance in anything else. And the other thing is that whole compatibility issue, right? You can only plug this into Thunderbolt 3 machines. Like you can't even, I mean, just to do the testing, we had to put that Thunderbolt DX3 Asus card on a desktop machine because desktop machines typically don't have Thunderbolt 3 native.
You're just supposed to have a Mac.
I guess, and it will just plug into a Mac. That's fine.
Oh, that explains the price.
Yeah.
Look, all Thunderbolt accessories are expensive, to be fair.
This is true.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just part of the unfortunate. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, it's just that it kind of has a double whammy going for it. If it was backwards compatible, that might help it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Right.
It definitely would.
Yeah, I mean, I carry around the TechQ Rapide in my bag to
Do you
use every
say
once
that
in a
every time
while.
you pull it out, too?
And I mean, you could plug that in.
And it's annoying because I go, ow.
You can plug that in all the way down to like USB 1. It would still transfer.
No, I'm talking about the Thunderbolt 3 one.
The Rapide?
Yeah, it's the Thunderbolt 3 one.
Oh, that's also
Yeah, you can plug that into 1394B.
Wait, that one doesn't go to USB?
No, it's Thunderbolt 3.
Okay, so that one's also, never mind. I got my parts mixed up.
Is that a Scirocco shirt you got on, Alan?
Yes, mine is.
Yes.
No.
See
Scirocco.
it? You see the Scirocco
The
on
Mark 1
Yeah.
Scirocco.
It's kind of more aimed to hell.
it? Is a Mark 1 Scirocco
Did you
really
go
just
all the way
a
to
Scirocco?
Germany to buy that?
No, they made a Mark II Scirocco.
Yeah, I know, but isn't the first one just the thing? It's like going back and retroactively making it episode 6.
They made a Mark II Scirocco, which was a different body external style, but still an A1 frame. So they didn't actually update the car.
You know what?
They just made it look
You know
different.
What have you done, Ryan?
I didn't.
Come on.
I didn't.
you don't
actually-
want to go there.
I
Russ.
didn't care.
Sorry.
Let's move on.
I've owned like 15
Check out the
Scirocco's.
review of the Samsung Portable SSD X5. It's on the website. Let's get into some news items. Okay, let's roll through this fast. Intel announces new 8th generation mobile processors. This is probably the third, fourth launch of 8th generation mobile processors thus far.
The third.
Okay.
Yeah. Started
Why
with the
so
15
many?
watt parts, had the 45 watt parts and the Iris Pro parts, and now we have more 15 watt parts and the 5 watt parts.
And a partridge in a pear
Let's make this quick. 15 watt parts.
The U
Nothing
series,
besides
Whiskey
higher
Lake
boost
U.
clocks,
Okay.
up to 600 megahertz, which is a pretty healthy boost clock if your notebook chassis will actually dissipate that much heat and get boost clocks up. Nothing there on the CPU side really. That's it. Just kind of tweaked frequencies. Amber Lake Y is more interesting because it's moving sort of microarchitectures from the previous Core M parts for Kaby Lake, and these are, I don't know, whatever the hell we're in, Kaby Lake refresh-ish.
Whiskey Lake.
The fourth step of the waltz? The fifth step of the waltz?
It's a square dance at this point, I think.
It can.
Yeah,
It
it's
can.
a square dance.
Hey, Ken.
Yeah.
Think these will be the processors in the new MacBook?
I think these might be the new processors in the Mac.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, just again, frequencies,
Yeah.
improved frequencies. You're not going to see any IPC improvements because, it's Kaby Lake to Amber Lake, like
Fair.
whatever.
The same thing on the Y series down there.
Yeah.
Still 2-core, 4-thread parts. I mean, the ranges in these clock speeds are getting ridiculous. 1.5 to 4.2 gigahertz.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Boosting to 4.2 and a 5 watt part is kind of insane.
Yeah.
Can it hold that for like 3-4 milliseconds? Like,
I mean, 2 or 3 full seconds.
I mean, these are usually passive machines, so
Yeah.
I would. If you ever saw 4 gigahertz, I'd be amazed.
Yeah.
But the kind of bigger news around this is they're talking about connectivity. They're talking about built-in "quote unquote" gigabit Wi-Fi, which is what Intel has been referring to as wireless AC dual bands 2x2 160 megahertz, which you have to have 160 megahertz support on your router, which is still a very new thing.
As much as I'm annoyed by the term gigabit Wi-Fi, I will say that it's easier to say than AC 2x2 160 megahertz.
Yeah, no, it's a needed marketing term,
until
I
you
think.
get to Gigabit Ethernet implementation 2.38.
Well, I mean, it's clearly like, hey, Qualcomm talked about gigabit LTE for a long time. Like, yeah, we got gigabit wireless too.
Yeah.
It's Wi-Fi,
for 5 feet from the router.
but it's gigabit.
And speaking of LTE, they were quick to point out that all of these, the Amber Lake and Whiskey Lake, can be paired with Intel LTE modems to kind of have platforms pre-built for that sort of thing.
Okay.
And if you want to shove LTE into one of these machines.
Yeah.
Because they have to answer to Qualcomm now in that area.
Right.
And then kind of the last big thing is integrated USB 3.1 Gen 2 10 gigabits per second on the chipset. Which,
Sweet.
will be nice. One less third-party controller in your notebook, kind of save some space.
I believe I saw some Twitter hubbub as well about Spectre
It's not going to be
meltdown
vulnerable.
stuff.
Yeah,
About it.
that's all I've seen.
Still not finalized. I think the last thing I saw was
What is it supposed to
either meltdown was fixed in hardware, but Spectre was still,
one of the Spectre
or
variants
vice
wasn't,
versa.
I think, or one of the generations of Spectre.
be? How about this?
I can't speak to any of
Is
that.
it the one that
'cause they didn't
impacts
talk
the
about it.
performance? Is really all I care about.
Not
Yes.
yet. No.
Okay. So then who cares? Honestly.
Well, I
Well, I
don't
mean,
know.
security is nice.
No, I understand. But if it doesn't impact the performance, then it's already fixed on the OS side anyway for the time being. So whatever. Right? Until they fix the one that gives you the performance back.
Considering they keep finding the
Well-
speculative execution vulnerabilities, fixing something in hardware might help them down the line.
That's
Well,
true.
and also, like,
I mean, Foreshadow was just this week for crying out loud.
you
Yep.
assume that the hardware fix will improve performance.
It should.
It might not, right? If they have to get rid of, if they still have to get rid of the speculative execution portion completely,
Yeah,
even
but
in hardware,
it's-
like-
the harshness.
I think
of,
it'd help mitigate the slowdown a bit,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's going to be, one for one if it did have that vulnerability
'Cause-
still existing.
Yeah, because right now you're like flushing caches and pipelines and stuff between during context switches.
Yeah.
And that's pretty
fair enough.
horrendous from an acceleration standpoint. right?
We're still trying to figure out and finalize that information. Obviously, Intel's not super keen on talking it up. You also posted something here, Ken, about Dell and their kind of IFA announcements. They had a whole bunch of stuff, but the one that stood out maybe was the XPS 13 changes.
Yeah. Whoa, I just noticed my title issue here, the XPS 13 2 and 2.
Ooh, the 2 and 2.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
You didn't know about this new form factor?
You didn't
and two.
ask
Like-
across the office.
You didn't say something out loud to Ken while you were sitting there. Hey, what's a 2 and 2?
No, I know that when I was reading it like
Oh,
5 minutes ago.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
anyway,
sorry.
so it's a 2
How
and
come
1
nobody's branded this TNT?
I don't know.
because it's not really a 2
Yeah,
and 2.
because it's not 2 and 2 isn't a thing.
Yeah,
it's a
Ken
typo.
screwed it
Yeah.
up.
TNT.
It's fine.
It's TNT. It's dynamite.
So are these basically Dell machines using the Whiskey Lake, Amber Lake parts?
The new Amber Lake parts.
Oh, okay. Because this
Yeah.
is the 13 2 and 1, so it's the new low power stuff.
As far as I can
Got it.
tell, no major changes in the chassis or anything, but you should see higher increased performance and probably a little bit higher battery life from these new processors.
Anything about-
And then they also announced a new lower end tier of XPS 13 using the dual core 8130U, 4 gigs RAM, 128 gig SSD. The 1080p display starts at $899.
Is the 8130U the 10 nanometer part?
No,
What's the? I can't remember the name, the model number of the.
I can never remember that
Canon
one.
Lake thing.
But no, because if it was the 10 nanometer part, it would also need a discrete GPU
Oh yeah, that's true.
because that whole
Yeah,
thing.
that's a good point. All right.
And then lastly, they announced that the Dell Developer Edition XPS machines are shipping with Ubuntu 18.04, so the latest release, which is nice to see.
Get your Dell
Yep.
laptops.
Yeah.
If you want to. Jeremy Acer showing off their stuff at IFA as well. They had a quite a range of things. What are the ones that stand out?
You've got their new Predator and what's the other one called?
Nitro.
Yes, thank you. The Predator and the Nitro. So the Predator is the G-Sync flavor. The Nitro is the the FreeSync version.
I think I love
both-
these. What do you call those
The
things
hood.
along the sides? The hood. Yeah, I think that's
It's-
cool.
It's part of Acer Vision Care,
Oh,
so it reduces eye strain.
oh.
Really?
Yeah.
It also keeps
Oh.
your neighbors from cheating off of you on the test.
Mm.
Also true.
Yeah.
Or, knowing where you are when you're gaming.
Helps you do that color grading on your gaming monitor.
Yeah. So you've got 144 hertz top refresh rate and these monitors top out at 4K. Of course, you're not going to be able to do both at once yet. And one thing that was pointed out is, they are HDR monitors. They're using the Display HDR 400 standard, which barely qualifies as HDR in that at least it's not standard.
I mean, you get the
But
color
apart-
accuracy stuff out of the Display HDR standard,
Yeah.
but yeah, the brightness,
Yeah, you get more
not-
color. You just
Yeah,
don't get the
you're not
more
going to be able to notice
volume.
the difference.
And so they just have the one Predator model. The Nitro actually comes with this 4K we're looking at, a 1440p widescreen and an IPS, and a TN one as well, in case you prefer the benefits of the twisted pneumatic.
Interesting.
Yep. Next up is the Swift 5, which goes perfectly with Al's portable SSD X5 because the body is made out of a magnesium lithium alloy.
Oh, great.
So just scrape it along and see what happens.
Wait a minute. Wasn't that super light laptop? Wasn't that
It is.
magnesium lithium alloy? The Lenovo NEC thing?
NEC, yeah.
The
So these guys did the same thing, but went lighter. 990 grams, 2.2 pounds, or as I say, less than the weight of most heat sinks nowadays for your processor.
That's a lighter than the Lenovo
What
one?
processor does it use?
It's an 8665U.
Oh, newly announced.
Yeah, strangely enough. The Aspire series got updated. The 7s are neat. They got the 8075G or 8305G. So
Kaby
you've got the
Q
RX
stuff?
Vega in there.
Yeah.
Which is
You know
interesting.
what the best part of that laptop is?
Which
It can
part?
achieve 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit.
Just not on your lap, I hope.
We
Although,
love magnesium alloys with lithium. That's not.
It's not a problem.
No.
What could
I'm not
possibly
throwing my
go
notebook
wrong?
into a fire.
Yeah, I don't think we have.
No,
all you
depends on
need
how
to
angry you
do
get.
is just get one corner to scrape on something and ignite.
Yes, I'm sure that's exactly how it works, Josh.
I think you might need some.
Oh, I
thermite
dropped
or
my
something.
notebook. Oh,
Actually,
my.
it is. Yeah, that stuff lights off hard.
Yes, I'm sure they didn't think about that at all in this compound.
My experience with magnesium strips is you have to have something very hot to light it.
Yep.
I would think dropping
Yeah,
on the
but
ground
once you
is not
do,
that. All right, what else? I want to get to this
fantastic.
thing at the bottom. Keep going.
Oh, sorry, quickly. So the Aspire comes with 5s. They have the Amber Lake Y or Whiskey Lake U paired with an MX 150.
Okay.
And the Aspire 3 is down around $500. And it'll just come with one of the Amber Lake or Whiskeys and something tiny to run its
That's
graphics.
a pretty monitor.
Yeah, no, that's an all-in-one. That's a Z24. So it's 24-inch,
Ooh.
1080p screen, 10-point touch screen. Same sort of a thing with a Whiskey Lake U and a GeForce MX 150 hidden behind it. It's also got support for up to 32 gigs of Optane if you
There
really
you go.
want to play with it. And it comes with a remote control and is more or less set up at the factory to be usable from around 4 meters away. So it functions more as a fancy TV or a shared machine than something you slap on your desktop to not take up much space.
Okay.
They went with the mixed reality headset trend. So the Ojo
Sure.
500, the 2 screens in the front will offer a 100-degree field of view at 2880 by 1440 with up to a 90 hertz refresh rate, which is, up there where you'd want to be. As you can see, they went with the more of the speaker design as opposed to the in-ear headset. So the idea being that this is sort of mixed reality. It's got cameras on the front, so you can use it as an enhanced reality thing, or it is fully Steam compatible if you want to play with it. And then there's the thing that Ryan just can't
This
stop
is the
looking
VR
at.
headset I want.
It is a headset. It's
Yeah.
just for your entire body.
When you look at this picture without scale initially, you think that's just.
It does kind of
It does look like something that wraps around your head, and like
and it's
that's
sitting on a nice mount.
Yeah, that's the stand
I
for
think
it.
I saw this in the Cyberpunk 2077 demo.
This
What
is
the
the
hell?
Chronos. Yes,
Oh.
it is called
That's
the
where I
Chronos.
hide from my wife and children.
Yeah,
In
in the
Taiwan.
Dad's on the Thronos. Leave me alone.
The
Isn't that the
porcelain
thing Darth
Thronos.
Vader comes out of?
Yes.
It does, yeah.
Darth Vader's toilet.
Yeah.
So this
So
is they're never gonna sell this, right? Like,
Oh, well,
Clearly
someone's going to freaking buy the damn thing.
Wait. So
Go on, 3 monitors, and you can stick a
I
printer
like
to
that.
the
I
top of
like
the
how they
back.
say it's a desktop PC. No, it is the freaking desk. Like,
Well, it's another all-in-one. I'll put it that way.
that's all in one, all right.
I want this. I want this. This is a grandma's boy style setup,
Yeah.
right? Slide in. Hopefully, you can push the whole thing up So the monitors, I don't know how you get in and out of it. Maybe you just slide it and then the side.
Out.
There's a hose. You don't actually have to leave.
You don't get out of this thing.
Okay. What is the point of the giant base underneath the chair, though? That's what I'm
want to
trying
be in
to.
that thing when it
PC.
tips over?
They've sort of done some demographics on the size of person that's going to be sitting in here, maybe?
Wow.
I'm gonna make the seat bigger.
So are the colors RGB compatible, or is it
Yeah,
just
that's what I want.
God,
That's what I
yes.
want to know.
Oh God, I hope so. Well, there's not a chance they ever sell this product. There's no chance.
all you need is a relatively small air compressor and a little hood kind of thing around the bottom, and you can have a floating chair. I mean, like 25 pounds per square inch, and you're going to be sliding all over your house.
Like, what
So
the
you
hell?
want this to be a hover chair?
I mean, you got to expand your doorways throughout the house or have an open concept.
So next time, I can just
you
see
can
it
do it.
now. I go over to Ryan's place. I ring his doorbell, and like he comes to the door, and it's just Ryan reaching his hand out of this thing. to
Hang
open
on,
the door.
hang on,
Oh, hey, come on in, Alan.
Bump.
And he just like takes off. And
I
comes
like how
back.
Josh doesn't think to put wheels on it. He thinks to make it into a fucking
Hover chair, mate. Hover chair.
You got to put tank style treads on either side.
yeah, all right,
That's what you do.
yeah.
Ryan's out there mowing his lawn while he's doing a racing game. Right?
That's what the deck
Is it John Deere compatible? Can we make that
Oh,
work?
that's a good idea.
No, too much
It's got a power
DRM.
takeoff, but you don't want to know what for.
Oh man.
They didn't have any more details on this thing, how much it was supposed to cost, or when I was going to be able to buy it, or anything like that. That's bullshit.
Let me check. I
Don't-
don't
you don't
think
have to look
so.
too
the chat's got it right. This is like the 2000s version of the chairs from Wall-E
Getting closer.
that all the fat people are
Yeah,
floating around in.
yeah. I like the Tron stripe along the top.
Yeah, it does look cool.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely have this in a room that I let no people ever see ever.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you do for a living, Ryan? Let me cut down the basement. Let me show you.
Let me show you my cave.
Oh, dear God. Got to put some pedals on it, though. Keep that, activity going. All right. Moving on. Thank you for that, Jeremy.
No, not yet.
No? Oh, okay.
Oh, what?
What?
Oh, damn it. They didn't list a price. I'm
I'm so
disappointed.
surprised.
Oh, wait.
Shocking.
Wait.
If you have to ask.
Yeah.
No, they don't have a price.
No, there's no price in the PR.
All right.
No.
Much disappoint.
Moving on. Join Battlefield 5 Open Beta, GeForce drivers 399.07. These are WHQL drivers that
We're so
are,
close to 400.
for the Battlefield 5 beta, and starts on September 4th, I think it is. Yeah, not a coincidence. Probably the 400 will start with the 20 series parts,
Yeah.
2080, 2080 Ti, whenever those actually decide to launch. I mean, I guess
You think they're
hopefully by
going to launch
September 20th.
CUDA 10 along with RTX?
They've already launched CUDA 10 with the Quadros.
Have they?
Yeah, the SDK's out.
Oh, well, never mind.
I think yes, then. That's my
I think-
prediction.
Yeah,
John.
they're going to launch it.
They should have called it CUDA X.
You moron.
CUDA X. Yeah. And then you can start naming it after mountains too. So get that driver out if you need it. I hopefully, you know what? I don't want anybody to send me a Battlefield 5 beta key because I don't want to have to play it all.
Fair.
You got a shiny gaming laptop with your logo on it.
That's true.
Why don't you want to play Battlefield 5?
Because he doesn't have a gaming throne.
Fair.
That's loud.
RTX isn't going to be enabled on it anyway, even if you
Yeah, it
had an
is.
RTX card. Is it really in the beta?
No, it's
I
don't
believe
think so.
Yeah.
you
I
need,
don't think so.
You need Redstone 5 for
Yeah, you need
DXR to
RS5
work.
and stuff too. So
Well, sort of.
yes, we'll just leave it at that. Also, in terms of random graphics news, Radeon, the AMD launched the Radeon Pro V340. This is not a gaming card. This is an enterprise level card aimed at virtualization. It's actually a dual Vega graphics card, which is kind of interesting just from a design standpoint. It has
Two slots.
two Vega 56 GPUs in it, 7,168 stream processors in total, two 8-pin power connectors, I think.
Is there one display output on that?
It's not a display. It's a mini display port, but it's not a display output. It's
Yeah.
for management
Okay.
and firmware
Wait.
updating and stuff like that. Because this is meant for
No,
VDI.
yeah, I understand that it shouldn't have a display output, but it's using a mini display port for firmware and management on a GPU. Isn't that what the
Why
host is
wouldn't
for?
you? Doesn't that make sense?
Looks like the perfect mining card.
Like, what kind of proprietary ass
expensive.
dongle are you going to have for that?
An AMD one.
Yeah, one that they'll sell you or that their OEM partners will sell you. This one supports up to 32 virtual machines. Like I said, VDI type system here.
Yeah, I mean, VDI is really the bread and butter for this sort of thing.
Yeah. Anything else on that, Jeremy?
I think it's only 2 slots.
Only 2 slots. I think it's supposed to be like under $2,000, right? It's
yeah, they didn't give an actual price.
it's not
but
crazy
it's definitely
expensive. So, and let's see. Speaking of drivers, Radeon Software Adrenalin Edition 18.8.2. What stands out here, Jeremy?
It's optimized for driving an F1 car through zombies in the 1950s.
Nice. Strange Brigade.
Yes, and F1.
Is F1 TM 2018 actually F1
cut and paste.
trademark?
Well, technically it is, but I shall remove that.
FITM 2018, yeah, PDFs.
I
What are you
played a
gonna do?
little Strange Brigade today
Okay.
while GPU benchmarking. It actually seems pretty cool. Like, it's a
Oh,
cool
really?
premise. Yeah, it's
Is this the?
a sniper elite people.
But is it the game where you're taking part in multiple generations of like
No.
combat? No.
No, it's a 4-player, up to 4-player co-op, sort of like zombie game.
Zombie survival
set in
game?
like the
It's like,
50s, 60s, something
Left
like
4
that.
Dead.
Yeah, it is.
Totally different though.
Left 4 Dead 4
Somehow.
confirmed. 3 confirmed.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
have
know
you
which one
picked
we're
up
supposed to be
F1
on.
2018 though? I hear that they've done some pretty impressive things with the graphics.
You know, I've been benchmarking with it. It looks exactly the same as 2017 to me from the benchmark. But I haven't,
Okay,
haven't played
I
it.
better just keep on my 2017.
It
and
turns
not
out that they've been able to make cars look really
And
good
you know what?
for a while.
You know what? The results are pretty damn similar too.
Odd.
I'm so happy I didn't buy that.
Yeah. It was on sale on Green Man Gaming when we got it for
It
benchmarking.
was on day 1.
But yeah, I might pass it.
And our last story of the night, let's talk about Global Foundries and the fact that they indefinitely suspended development of 7-nanometer process technology, affecting really 2 customers, AMD and IBM. And in reality, neither of them that dramatically, if at all, because AMD was already going towards TSMC for their first processor and their first GPU using 7-nanometer. Josh, what are your thoughts on Global Foundries' decision here, based on what we know to this point?
You know, there's a lot to unpack here, and sadly, I'm still writing and compiling some information on.
Okay, well then you can keep it
this.
short, and we'll talk about it next week. That's fine too.
Okay, yeah, that would be fantastic. But
Almost like I
essentially,
called it a teaser.
you know, Global Foundries has been a money pit for Mubadala. Is that how you pronounce them from
don't know.
Dubai? They've been putting a lot of money into them. They've been making acquisitions. They've been, you know, in fact, IBM paid them to take their foundry group.
It's pretty great. It's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, until you figure out it's like, you know, hey, I've got this $75,000 car and I'm paying $2,300 a month. And so I'll tell you what, I'll just give you the car if you just start making the payments for it. And
Okay.
I'm going to be happy.
What if I take the car and don't make the payments?
Well, then people from Dubai are going to come and visit.
We would
Okay.
come and take your EUV machines.
Yeah.
No, leave my
They're gonna-
EUV.
You know, some guys with sledgehammers
They're just gonna bust
and,
in the
out the
sidewall.
outside walls of
Clean
your
room
clean
be damned. Let's do
and
this.
take UV. Things out. You know, and so okay, so they said essentially 90% of their R&D money was being sucked into 7-nanometer development. Now, if you look back, Global Foundries, they tried their own 14-nanometer process. It didn't work out. They licensed it from Samsung. I don't know what the license agreement is and how much Samsung gets
Pack
from.
of bubblegum.
What's that?
Pack of bubblegum.
Something like that. I mean, Global Foundries got to be paying still for
Oh, yeah,
that.
for
And
sure.
then they developed their own, you know, kind of 12 nanometer from that Samsung 14 nanometer. And that's where they're actually making some money. And they're trying to push that process as well as they're the only other FDSOI foundry in the world. I think the other one is ST Micro in France. They've got a fab that does about 5,000 wafer starts a month, which is not very much. I mean, Mega Fab is 55,000 wafer starts a month, if not higher. And so they're going to focus on the things that they already have developed. They're trying to widen out their consumer base, trying to get probably just into the black, because they haven't been for a long time since AMD divested themselves of this. It's been a money hole. It's been a sink. I think it's the right decision for them. It's kind of cruddy for the industry. It's cruddy for their partners, but they have no choice, because how much money are you going to sink into this?
It's kind of interesting to me, because it feels like it was very recently that I was there. When the hell was that?
Like 2011 or
no. I was back up in Malta it was this year.
Yeah.
And I toured and I saw the EUV machines.
Oh, yeah.
One was installed. They had another that was being set up. They talked about how they had to seal off the clean room to bring in this crane to hold the EUV machines and then reconstruct the clean room around it, and what a pain in the ass
Good
it was.
Lord.
And I thought,
Let's do construction in a clean room.
That's what they had to do, right? And the whole talk was about. I mean, they talked a little bit tangentially about these, different materials, the FDSOI, the other processes they're working on, but it was still heavily about, this is our 7nm roadmap, this is our schedule, we're going to be a fast follower, we're not going to be first to market, but we're going to do this, this, and this. I mean, and now they're going nah. They changed CEOs. They probably got a couple of different quarterly reports back. They saw what TSMC was doing. Maybe they saw again how much further ahead they were. They didn't want to license again from Samsung. Couldn't afford to do that. And I got to get the impression that they weren't confident that the amount of orders they were going to get at 7nm, even with AMD and IBM, were going to be enough to sustain the development costs for any kind of foreseeable future. So,
and it's not even just the development cost, but it's the materials and the power cost of what they're doing now. They don't have their EUV machines are not online for any kind of heavy duty manufacturing. But what is it that someone who's saying that it was like 5 or 10 megawatts per EUV machine?
Oh,
I mean, that's like 5 wind turbines powering one machine.
Yeah,
it's a ludicrous amount of power that these
a lot
things
of camel power
require.
Yeah,
5 or 10
February. I was there in February.
Where do you go from here if you're Global Foundries?
Make it
you're
cheaper.
Trying to expand your base of your customers. You're getting into as many low cost niche markets, kind of with. I mean, they're with RF, mixed mode, analog stuff. FDSOI is awesome. 22 FDX and their upcoming 12 FDX. Really, really good, interesting physics and behind that. I mean, the electrical capabilities. I mean, it's not as dense as what we get with like a 7nm FinFET, obviously.
Sure.
But the power characteristics and back bias and stuff like that, it's really outstanding. And they're
unique,
able to use
else.
planar designs and not FinFET.
There's a whole. One of the things that I wrote this in my Market Watch piece I put up this week. It's really easy to get lost in the idea of 10nm, 7nm, this being everything that is foundry business, but the vast majority of chips that are made are still made on older process technologies, probably going back to 90 nanometers and stuff, right? If you look at what a small fab like Skywater does, it used to be Cypress up in Minneapolis. They do a lot of military work. They're doing a lot of customized and specific materials that nobody else can use in the advanced processes. And Global Foundries is just going to lean more towards that direction, take take where their specialties are and try to.
There's plenty of market for people that are still stuck on building parts on 90 or whatever they can find elsewhere, right?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, as enthusiasts, we focus on the leading edge stuff, CPUs, GPUs.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of ICs that are being developed, they don't need to have 7 nanometer process. They don't need 10. They don't need 22. They need, 28 nanometer high K metal gate. I mean, they need 45 nanometer stuff because they're small, very focused ASICs that if you shrink them down, they become kind of useless because you can't put enough pads on there, or you just waste a whole bunch of die space to be able to route pads onto the bottom of that so it can communicate with the world. And so what's the point in using 7 nanometer when a 65 nanometer thing is the perfect size? You get the power is minimal no matter what because it's such a focused part.
I was reading some of the earnings reports from ASML, who is one of the biggest providers of equipment to fabrication facilities, and they were talking about, basically people watch that and figure out what their projections are to project for the foundry market as a whole. And one of the things that they had said, and I think it was this quarter or the quarter before, that there was a significant shortage of like 28, 45, 65 nanometer production equipment because it wasn't being manufactured anymore and people couldn't refurb it and resell it fast enough for all these other fabs that were trying to produce in the space. So we'll talk more about it probably when Josh writes up his piece, but it's not the end of the world. I think a lot of people saw this and went, oh my God, AMD is totally screwed now. And I don't think that's the case. They were always leaning in TSMC. There's a reason why over the last several months it leaked out that 7 nanometer Vega is going to be built at TSMC, that Rome, the first Zen 2 part, is at TSMC.
They already had 7 nanometer stuff back, and the only 7 nanometer process that was produced was TSMC.
Yeah, they had not taped anything out at Global Foundries yet. So, they weren't as far along as maybe some people had predicted they would be. All right, let's get into our hardware.
Are you going to skip Mr. Anderson, or did you want a quick comment on that?
Oh, yeah. No. Mr. Anderson, otherwise known as Jim Anderson, who was Senior Vice President of the Client Compute Group at AMD, is not there anymore. He resigned and he took a job at Lattice Semiconductor as the CEO, which is it's pretty disappointing. Jim's been there for a while. He's kind of been the guy overseeing all this stuff with the rise of, the rise of Ryzen and the Threadripper brand and all the, the Ryzen Mobile and all the consumer stuff, including GPU, was under him over that time period. So I'm not exactly sure what the stuff was there, why he left. Most of the rumors are that this was like kind of a, he got as high up as he could get inside AMD, wanted to be CEO. Lisa Su's been getting a lot of attention and doing very well, so she's not going to suddenly step aside for this. So he went on, and don't be surprised if you see him in another 5-10 years pop up at another company that you might find interesting. I know when it first came out that he was resigning, but they didn't say where he was going to be CEO of. Some people had said, "Oh, you're going to go to Intel," and it's like, not a chance.
No, he's too young.
Not a chance.
I think he's been there, done that, hasn't he?
Well, he was at Intel for a short time after the company he was at was acquired. But it's not like he was an Intel lifer or anything like that. So, all right, now we'll do hardware software picks of the week. Mine is this thing I've had plugged in here. I kept thinking it was going to show me more than that, Alan, than it did. This is
you have to have it.
You have to have software installed.
Yeah, I see Josh has a cat. Now you need a cat.
This is the Elgato, the cat. Look at this cat.
It's weird because they're a German company. So.
It's a great cat. So the Stream Deck is it's interesting now because Corsair bought Elgato 2 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So this is a switcher. It's basically an array of 3x5 buttons.
Scroll back up.
Back up
to the top.
Does it start at 0 or 1?
I'm sorry.
Does it start at 0 or 1?
Doesn't say. Doesn't say. I can confirm that it is one OLED screen underneath it, because when I push the middle button like down real hard, you get the screen like depressed effect on the other buttons. Yep. But it's got like an OLED screen on it, so you can configure what the icons are and the buttons are. You use this if you're going to stream on Twitch. If you're gonna, we could replace Alex with this thing here, and I just have 5 buttons, right? Is that pretty much how it works, Alex?
Oh,
5 buttons.
There was a point where Ken developed his own replacement, and then I think he broke it on accident so that we couldn't actually do it.
On purpose accident.
Yeah.
Let it go, Ken.
Yeah.
So this actually
These are
has
LCDs. I'm sorry, not OLED.
This actually has sort of greater implications than just like streaming. That's what it's marketed towards. But it has very advanced macro key settings. You can make this do just about anything, and they keep updating the software. And you can do macros upon macros. You can have multiple pages of this stuff. Like you put like GIFs on the individual screens. It's crazy. If there's any sort of like automation you want to do to simplify your life, you could run EXEs. You could run scripts. You could do whatever the hell you want on it.
Like
will it help my kids do homework?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of course, yeah. Will you buy one?
Push the button.
So how much is it?
You've got to attach the electrode to the kids first, though.
How much is it? That's the important
I
question.
think this one's $150. They have one with a less amount of keys. I don't remember how many for 100. I think or one.
150 isn't bad.
Yeah, it's a very well built product.
Let's see.
It comes with a stand. It can adjust.
Yeah, I've got that
different
here.
angles.
It's got. You can see it in the picture there. The stand that comes down, and much like a lawn chair at a pool, you can adjust it. It's got different kickouts for different levels that you want it to be at. These are really well built devices. They don't feel cheap. They're not chintzy.
And like I said, they keep updating the software. Like if you look at their community stuff, you look at the subreddit for Elgato Gaming, they're pretty active on that, and they just keep adding new software features.
This one is we definitely bought ourselves. Didn't we? This one here.
We bought it when it first
the serial
came out.
number is 926.
We bought it when it first came out, considering I had kind of developed my own hacked one of these, and then it came out as a commercial product, and I went,
You just had to come full circle on it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat thing. So you could use this you could set up macros for like Premiere probably with it as well. If you had a function that you did constantly, or maybe you have a button that has type my home address so that anytime you're getting stuff shipped to you, you can just hit that button and it.
Do you know what this reminds me of?
No.
1970s CAD stations.
Ooh.
Because they just had, that was what? They had that little joystick mouse thing, and then they had the buttons that they pressed that did different functions.
Actually, it'd be a really cool thing.
It'd be handy for CAD.
A CAD.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about
modeling
CAD
program.
All right.
Don't be a CAD.
Let's see. Who do we have next? We're going to have
King Jeremy, the Wicked.
King Jeremy? Okay.
King Jeremy
the Grasping.
the Wicked.
All right, so NordVPN is not the worst VPN on the planet.
And they only steal bandwidth.
Hang on.
Yeah. However, for $100, you can get 6 computers covered before it for 3 years.
Hang on.
So, if you're looking for a VPN, you've got friends traveling that'd like to be able to access their stuff, or you're doing fun things for the next 4 days. 3 years for $99 is not that bad.
How much do you have to worry about bandwidth on your VPN service, right? Because everything you do goes through that, right? So if you're downloading anything or whatever, do they have like download limits or bandwidth limits while you're traveling, that type of stuff? That's what I would be curious about.
They don't, and they'll block for the most part being able to monitor your bandwidth usage on certain ISPs.
Yeah, and they let you do 6 devices through your NordVPN account. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I've got a friend that's headed over to Thailand, and he was asking me, and I'm like, well, shit, for this, we just split it, $45 a piece, 3 years.
Yeah.
Done.
It says unlimited bandwidth here,
I think it's not so much that they're limiting you. It's just like, what's the max throughput you're going to get?
Right. Like, is it going to slow you down? But usually when I think of times I'm using a VPN, I'm already expecting the internet to be slow.
Yeah.
For whatever that's worth, I guess.
Hey, look, your IP address up top.
Oh no, we're gonna get hacked.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm protected.
Hackers.
It says unprotected.
Oh no.
You are unprotected.
Little they know we're already going through a VPN.
Well, that's true.
They wouldn't know.
I accept your cookies. All right, what else? Who's next?
RX 580s right now are getting cheap. Watch out for specials. This one may not be the greatest one. I mean, the reviews vary, but of course, reviews may not always be great. But the big thing is the free game pack bundle.
Oh, right, yes.
That's $150 worth of games on a $240 card.
Oh,
And
what
it's
do I get?
the
Check
Assassin's
the
Creed
chat.
Odyssey, the Strange Brigade, which you talked about, and then Star Control Origins, which use Adam Baldwin for voice acting on that particular one.
It's been a while since we've had a good game bundle.
Weird.
Because they've been able to sell GPUs without them, right?
Yeah.
Like, miners don't care about game bundles, as it turns out.
The new Assassin's Creed title.
Yeah, the new Assassin's Creed
Strange
Odyssey.
Brigade.
And you said Strange Brigade looked like it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, looks cool.
Strange Brigade you get now, Odyssey and Star Control Origins are coming out later, right?
I believe so.
Later this year, so. Very cool. All right. Jeremy.
You already did,
No,
Joe.
Allyn.
What are you, a parent?
Kid.
Didn't
Go.
use his full name yet, so
So I found myself playing with this thing again the other day. I thought I was just going to collect.
Whoa.
I thought I was just going to collect
Playing
dust
with?
on the shelf.
Again?
But so I got this for like a Christmas present or something. Atari Flashback Portable Deluxe. The price has been kind of creeping up because I don't think they're making them anymore. So I would say
it's the special edition.
it's got a screen on it, like as opposed to the ones that were just the joystick that you plugged into the TV, right?
can it do that proper spin-it screen of the old Nintendo one? Just because?
I don't know, but this one, so it's got a screen on its own. It'll run on batteries. You can play Atari games or whatnot. It runs off of an SD card with ROMs on it, basically. Like if you want to add more games, right? SDHC, not SDXC, so you're limited to 2 gigabytes worth of Atari ROMs, which I don't think is going to be a problem.
SDHC is more than 2 gigabytes.
No, I think 2 isn't it 2 where it switches over?
No,
That's what you.
I don't know.
it's like 32.
Oh, well, I remember is I had to go, well, for whatever reason, I had to go smaller than that. So there's something limiting it where it won't recognize cards that are too big. Anyway, filled the thing full of all the Atari game ROMs, and you just get your retro on like a handheld thing with actual buttons on it, right?
Cool.
And you can still plug it into a television as well. It comes with the.
Does it have a joystick port then, or do you use the handheld?
No, you still
with
use
the
that.
port?
It just the screen switch.
Yeah.
I think it stays on both actually.
Oh, really?
Like I think the display stays on too. But yeah, I mean,
Cool.
it's kind of pricey new there, but I would say like
Does it have adventure?
I'm not sure if it comes with adventure. Actually, if you go back to that, you already closed
Because
it, didn't
it's the best thing. It's the first
it
Easter egg.
is.
Come on, man.
you? Oh,
Yeah.
It's all a
Looks like it's
bunch
got
of
Pitfall.
Activision games.
let's see. I have a picture of the back.
Pac-Man,
Oh.
Wait, does that
box.
say new hit titles?
It does.
Classics
It does have
and
adventures.
new.
Does it have Custer's Revenge on it?
No, it does not have Custer's Revenge.
Oh.
No, Crystal Castles.
Ooh.
It comes with a lot of titles, but again, like if you know where to look, you can basically add all.
Wink.
You can like add every single Atari
It doesn't list
thing
what
ever.
games come with it in this listing.
Is there no picture of the back of the box with the pictures?
No,
That's a
there's
shame.
just these 3 pictures.
The back of the box has all of the
Hmm.
titles that it comes with. It's like a decent number out of the box.
Did you get the travel case for the Texas Instruments TI-84 Plus graphing calculator along with it?
No. No.
Oh,
Those are
come
frequently bought
on.
together.
Yeah, by one person that happened to
Well,
do that,
now
maybe.
it looks like it would fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, like it.
I guess.
Oh, well. All right.
No one took a picture of the back. That's just bizarre.
Dummies.
It does look like an Atari Lynx, actually, per the chat.
Alex,
Icon.
is this yours or
It is.
what do you got?
So no one noticed this in the rundown today, but nope, no one noticed it.
What
Oh,
happened?
I did notice different shading.
Yeah, we have different shades
Yeah.
of color in the rundown. Ooh, yeah.
Oh.
And
Wanky.
yeah, so this tool actually came in very, very useful for this. I might have brought this up over a year ago, Peloton. It's a color palette generator.
Look at that.
It's an amazing tool.
Gives you the different shades. Like
You
you're
can do, if you go to the very top there, it has the type of palettes it gives you. It'll give you page demos. It'll give you less and CSS outputs. I have used this tool so much whenever I get suckered into web work.
So if you're going to paint your house,
Sure. Yeah.
You just go to Lowe's and you ask for the hex code of the paint you want.
yes.
You go to your paint mixer guy with a hex
Can you go to
code.
Home Depot and give them a hex code?
Actually, I think you
bet
can.
you
There's
can.
color matching stuff.
It won't
so
work.
Pretty
but
sure
you
you
could.
can.
You have to talk to
could.
the right guy.
That's pretty cool.
This is hours of entertainment too. and you can, when you set a palette up, you can share it.
Nobody's having a seizure, are they?
Yeah.
This is my favorite set right here.
black.
It's just
black.
It's like my
emo.
soul.
And there's also the ever fun randomize.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, there's a randomize button.
Yep.
Top right.
Top right.
Top right. Randomize.
Like I said, hours of entertainment.
Doesn't seem very random. It's
Because
kind of
he's
like
using similar.
oh.
You're not very random.
It's like playing with the color palettes for a website on Dreamweaver.
Yep.
there you go. This one's pretty random.
Oh, that's it. Bring the blink tag back.
I want the website to just do that.
Oh.
Now I'm right clicking.
Can it just do that?
I'm sure you could script it up if you really wanted to.
You should try to read this website, bitches. Have the text be doing everything, just going nuts.
All right, very cool. That's going to be it for us this time, guys. PCPro.com/podcast. Find all the back episodes, show notes, links to the stories we talked about, picks of the week, all that crap is there. Videos, MP3s, find it there. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Bye.